Well, we do demonstrate instruments for our collection. As you saw, we did the video using our 1936 Overtone. So, I mean, the educational sharing component, when appropriate, is definitely a big part of how we convey the information.
There are certain parameters to follow, which we would go to you to find out about. But we do have just permission. I might mention that this was originally plugged in through two prongs here. When the guitar was discovered, Gage Brewer had been the owner and had this jack installed in it. I think he used this just in his studio as a backup thing, and then probably it was at the back, in the back of the closet. It was not one of the guitars the family retained. So let me
Did you tune these first, Eric?
It's not really tuned. It's tunable. I noticed there's a missing screw, so. Tubes have to line up there. I'm setting the tone right in the middle. The EQ, there's treble, bass, and presence.
And this proves the point that the electric guitar pickup really hadn't gone anywhere since 1932.
Yes. And it's really heavy. I mean, like super heavy. And can you tell me why that is? Is it the top or is it the bracing?
It's the big wooden block inside, and also the pickup weighs about 1.5 pounds.
Yeah. But
That's a hunk of steel.
I switched the ground on it.
thank you. Will you just put it on standby for a second?
Sure. Is that the one that, oh.
So yesterday, we were talking about how this is not really an acoustic instrument. It really kind of is a solid body electric guitar in its way. This is as much acoustic sound as it puts out.
It's almost like a practice guitar. It's enough to hear, to practice on, but not for an audience.
And
It sounds like one of those little backpacker guitars, Martin made a while back.
Sitting here playing it, like, when you play an acoustic guitar, you can feel the resonance against your body, like I'm feeling nothing. It feels like a solid body instrument.
This is Chuck Ward.
Oh, thank you. I'm just gonna take it off.
We know who you are.
You want to turn it back on?
Sure.
I think my mom is calling me for Mother's Day.
You need to take a break?
No, I'll do it later.
Okay. Oh, wrong switch, sorry.
But yeah, it actually sounds amazingly modern.
Yeah.
I mean, you could gig with this guitar. Except for the intonation. There you go.
Changes your right-hand style a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's why I never bought one of those Rickenbacker Spanish guitars with the horseshoe pickup. You can't mute.
Would you agree with Ranger Doug? It plays like butter?
Well, it plays pretty damn good, I have to say. Doesn't intonate very well. But I wonder, now here's a good question for you. Do you think that Gage Brewer was playing lead guitar stuff on this instrument, or do you think that he was just mostly comping rhythm?
I expect that he handed that off to the second guitarist, and he played Hawaiian.
Almost immediately, they got the regular Rickenbacker electric Spanish like they have upstairs in the thing.
Right.
And that might be why you never see this one in pictures or anything, because it just didn't, the intonation was so far off it didn't work right.
Right.
Just good for the big debut, and then they got the real ones in.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, this is like the iPhone 4. As soon as the 5 came out, man, you couldn't see this, man. now there's a 6 coming out.
7.
I'll put you back on standby there and trade you.
Okay. Now, did you leave all the settings the same?
Yes.
Because I'm curious about the volume of the Charlie Christian pickup, which is a pretty low output pickup. Oh, man, this is frightening. That's the same setting. Wow, same volume.
Yeah.
Not as loud, yeah.
Would you like me to turn it up just a
You're gonna
bit?
have to turn it.
Wait, turn up on the guitar first.
It's up on the
That's all
guitar.
the way up.
All the way up on here.
Also notice there's a world of difference in the tone. This is obvious, but between a neck-mounted pickup and a pickup that they mounted right next to the bridge, you know. And you can answer this question: was anybody else besides Gibson putting their pickups out by the neck?
Everybody put them down by the bridge, and then when the other guys started putting them up by the neck, Gibson put it back down by the bridge.
Yeah, it's interesting because that is like the jazz guitar sound, you know. It's a lot mellower than the pickup down by the bridge.
Are those flat wound strings? or-
No, they're pretty light gauge round wound strings. So
I think I
imagine,
put, they're 11s.
yeah, but I would imagine when Charlie was playing, he probably had 13 flat wound. I'm sorry I can't do all the Charlie Christian licks like Chris Krebs did the other night. That was impressive. Yes, sir.
Could you like give us a little tone knob
Yeah.
variation and see what kind of difference you got?
Well, that's all the way off. Almost immediately. It was like full up. Now, Lynn, were most of the Charlie Christian pickups this far away from the strings? Because, you know, most of
Who
the...
knows? I think that's actually adjusted all the way up.
Really?
I don't think it'll come any closer than that, if I remember right.
I mean, one thing that might have influenced the volume is that the strings are actually a long way away from
Yeah.
the blade.
Yeah, and on the Rickenbacker, there it is, right there on top of those bowl pieces.
And even when they started putting P90s on Gibsons, you know, it was a big thing to have the P90 very close to the strings.
Right.
Just because that was the area.
Well, you know, the whole thing, I'm talking to Walter Fuller, he told me they always tried to make their guitars sound as amplified as close as they could to the acoustic sound of the guitar.
Right.
So maybe that was why. And they were absolutely wanting to stay away from any sort of distortion.
Right.
I have a question. It's kind of a lively sounding guitar. Is it what kind of wood is it consisted of? Is it maple back and sides or
And spruce top.
spruce top? Okay.
You know, it's a pretty bright combination.
Yeah, it's lively sounding.
But, you know, getting back to the distortion thing, when I've talked to some of the players that were playing electric instruments in the 40s,
And they cut through.
I'm like, man, you know, that tone you got on that Bob Wills record was incredible. He's like, we thought it was horrible. It was so distorted, you know, we wanted something that was really clean sounding.
That's maple back and sides, right?
Yeah.
The guy that I'm referencing is a guy named Herb Remington who played steel guitar for Bob Wills. And,
Okay.
you know, he was one of the first Fender endorsers playing Fender steel, and I was playing him this record, and he's like, oh, it's just
awful.
Like, man, you have no idea how much money you guys spend to like replicate that tone, you know? Shall we switch out? I'm getting nervous playing this thing. Thank you, Lynn, for the opportunity.
I'm glad you had it, Deke.
Bigsby pickups aren't wound that hot. They're only about 4K, but they're a lot louder than, you know, a Charlie Christian pickup or something like that. One thing I didn't get into in the discussion earlier about Bigsby was his pickup design was really advanced for the time. And actually, this is another question I was going to ask you, Lynn. When he started making these pickups, his first steel guitars had copies of Rickenbacker horseshoe pickups on them, and Rickenbacker told him to cease and desist, and so he designed his own pickup. And these things used Alnico 9. And this comes from an interview with a steel guitar player who was very good friends with Paul Bigsby, who had a steel made for him in about 1959 or so. And he had this extensive discussion with Paul Bigsby about the pickups. And Bigsby told him, yeah, I use Alnico 9 because the high cobalt content is pleasing to the ear. Which is like, has anybody else ever
I've never
used-
heard of Alnico 9.
Well, you know, there's all these different Alnico things, and the difference in them, I think, is the amount of cobalt that's in
Right,
them.
but I've never actually heard that they went that high.
Yeah, well, I think that was the highest you could get. But then another interesting thing about the Bigsby pickup wasn't wound that hot. It's only about 4K ohms. But he put his magnets on the outside of the coil. There's two magnets on the outside of the coil. They're not underneath. They're not, you know, poultice.
Are they vertical instead of
Yeah,
flat?
they're vertical.
Like a Firebird?
Yeah,
Vertical, but one on each side, so it's a P90 without them underneath, but on. Wow.
Yeah.
That's really going to focus the magnetic field
Yeah.
very strongly.
And then he, you know, potted the whole thing from behind. So, you know, for 1948 when he was making those pickups, that's,
Yeah.
you know, you can tell why the guys who were
And he's really spread the magnetic field width
Yeah.
to pick up a lot of string energy.
Any requests, Matt?
You must have some sugarfoot rag.
Oh, man.
You gotta follow Chris.
We were the other night.
Well, you know, from Travis with his Bigsby electric guitar, let's play a little bit of
Any of that. But you know, it's interesting with when Bigsby guitars were being placed with all the famous country bands of that era, that was really sort of the beginning of the twang then. You know, even before the Fender thing, Fender became known for their trebly, twangy sound, but Bigsby was really the first guy where the country players like Butterball Page and Billy Bird were playing their picks like literally right next to the bridge so they could play lines like to get the twangiest, trebliest sound they could get out
That
of it.
lap steel sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We played the Strength of a Roll and the E thing.
I don't think we can do it with the amp not malfunctioning.
Dead on.
Well, yeah, when you do some of the rockabilly things like the Johnny Burnett, it's like, well, there it is, that's the tone.
Little Buck Owens, tiger by
Well.
the tail. There you go.
I need a telly to do that. Well, anything else? I don't want to bore anybody.
Well, maybe Matthew Hill would get up and back you up on the song. He'll play a little bass, and
Sure.
and you can hear what the bass does to This is Fender's original design here. And Fender gets all the credit for having invented the electric bass, but however it was invented back in the 30s by a guy named Paul Tutmark in Seattle, Washington.
Although, you know, this is a very interesting thing, and I think I maybe sent you a copy of this. I was doing some newspaper research, and there's a really early newspaper interview with Leo Fender, and they asked him, you know, like, well, how did you get into this? And he says in the article, like, I was working on an electric bass 20 years ago.
Wow.
That's the first thing I've ever seen.
When was the article?
The article was from the 50s sometime.
So he claims his work on electric bass in the 30s?
I'll have to dig out that article and send it to you.
Yeah, I need to see that.
And we should say, not an electric bass, but an electric bass guitar.
Right.
Right.
Yes, because Rickenbacker had electric basses in the 30s.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, unfretted stand-up style. Well, except for that one I've got, that one's fretted.
Hey.
It's magic!
Better turn me down on that channel.
Let's see if we can get rid of a little bit of ground, maybe that helps a little bit.
No, actually, that's as good as it gets. I think the...
So this is a very authentic early electric
Yeah,
instrument.
this is just...
Am I on?
There are accounts of
You got a bum chord.
Check
guys
it volume
get
now.
kicked off the gig because they brought their dang electric instruments. Is that not making noise for you?
No noise.
Well, let's try a different chord, man. This is very authentic, you're right.
And
It is Sunday.
Have to trade places.
You'll have to come around, move your chair down.
Okay.
Just drop that old chord. And sorry about this, folks. This is called freestyling.
Yeah. Here, I'll just... I will sit at your feet as is appropriate.
There.
Is that a real one, Eric?
It is. It's been totally restored, but it's very authentic. All the electronics are authentic in it.
What year do you want, eh?
It is a 53. Which
Close enough.
they were built in 51, but they hadn't changed at all by 53.
I have one of there's the original game tag and everything. I'll bet you'll be taking some of that. Oh, yeah, I went too. Turned down the line right over
And it started ringing a lot compared to, it would have had a belt mute. You want to mute it here real quick?
You know, I like the way, you should see this, he's doing this with dollar bills.
Everybody. Is that dated too much?
Yeah, I'll split with it. What do you want to do?
How about a little before boogie and
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4.
another one.
Well, let me hold you upside down now. Yeah, you need to get up and play the Bigsby guitar, man. No, you drove all the way from St. Louis. Get up here.
Yeah.
This is a friend of mine. He's qualified there. He's a guitar repairman that works at Big Red.
Would you like to jump in on the bass? then?
Sure, I'll play bass with Matt.
This is amazing.
Yeah, take off the jacket. You don't have any hillbilly belt buckles, do you?
He does on the side there. We got to make sure to get up.
And Matt's a great picker.
Guitar player again? I don't know what to do. Oh my God.
Travis song.
I'm doing this for myself, not for you.
Just do it.
Some blues.
Know that I'm playing the electric bass the proper way. As Leo envisioned it. Somewhere Paul Bigsby saying, well, I didn't make them to be played like that.
He'd be proud to hear it.
Well, that's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sorry, before you go, I want you to sign up for
Would Paul, do players request certain neck shapes or things like that?
The instance of that is there was a real late one that the guy ordered an extra fret, because most of them are 20 fret necks, and he ordered a 21 fret.
And when he did that, and he put the extra fret, he made an extra deep cutaway, and he also would make these sort of smooth transition things. He made a special one so that you could go way up and play on that last fret, and it would still be comfortable to your palm.
Okay.
But other than that, I don't know.
How does the neck feel compared to?
Well, it's the funny thing about these necks is I actually think that he based his neck designs on caves of that era. They're a little bit bigger than like a Fender neck.
Okay, I see the man getting the gloves on, so I know he's getting serious. And we're getting close to that time. But before we wrap everything up, a couple things. First, I would like to say thank you to Deke for doing his thing, and what a thing it is too. One more big hand for Eric and everybody at the museum for putting this on. What an amazing weekend it has been. And before I give the mic back to the man, one thing, I mentioned that Eric and I were interested in this, starting this electric guitar society. And what I would like to do is kind of our first official act is to, I have a little sign-up sheet, which is the crudest thing in the world. I just wrote Electric Guitar Society at the top, and a place for people's names and their emails. And I'd like to start, like I say, an email list to where we can, email you whatever it is the next thing we decide to do. And we will take it from there. So anyway, back to the man.
Here, I'll take that. If you need to.
Where are your gloves, man?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, this concludes our symposium. I won't sit here and thank everyone individually, but there are 9 people who came in from out of town to present, and then many more of you come from out of town to participate, and we will keep you apprised. We're going to come up with some summary videos and information about this, and thank you for your enthusiasm for it. Bye-bye.